Hi, and in the rec this week we're going to talk about this bad boy, the Irix 15mm cinema lens. Hi, and welcome to the rec, where we're going to be looking at this new 15mm T2.6 cinema lens from Swiss brand Irix. Well, designed in Switzerland, actually made in the Far East. That means you get the very best of European design, but at a lower price point than if the whole lens itself was made in Europe. But what is a cinema lens, and why do you need one? Most cinema lenses are manual focus prime lenses. Yes, you can get servo lenses and you can get zoom lenses, but when most people think of cinema lenses, they tend to think of a prime, i.e. one focal length, fixed lens. Irix has been around in the photo market for quite a few years, but in recent times has really branched into the filmmaking market, using lots of the technology it's learned from its successful photography lenses. But instead of starting their route into filmmaking with a huge range of lenses, they started kind of at the extreme ends. The first lens they brought out was a 150mm macro lens, followed by a super wide 11mm lens. Super wide, super wide, call it what you like. It's really, really wide. In recent times they've come out with a 45mm lens, but now they've relaunched this, the 15mm T2.6 lens, available in a variety of fittings. This is obviously a Sony E-mount fitting, they do a PL, a Canon fitting and a Micro Four Thirds. And best of all, it's reasonably affordable. Currently in Britain these are around about £1,000 and in the States around about $1,200. Yes, that is a fair chunk of change, but compared to some of the higher end, the premium cinema lenses, it's a fraction of what they cost. It puts them right at the budget end of the market. They might be at the budget end of the market in terms of price, but they're not in terms of looks, feel and how they work. Now you might think that this is actually quite a chunky lens, but really I suppose it is. However, it is smaller than most of the similar cine lenses of this type. It's a little bit bigger than a Zeiss CP3 and a bit smaller than the Zeiss CP2, which is a lens that costs significantly more than this and really revolutionised the market. But what makes a cinema lens so special? Well, it's about build quality and ease of use, and essentially the manual focusing. These are on geared rings. This has got a 180-degree throw with a really smooth, beautiful action when you're manual focusing the lens. It's great to use on a cinema rig, or you can use it handheld and focus it yourself. But it's just got that lovely tactile quality, just the right amount of tension so you can really nail the focus. It feels like you're part of the lens. It really does feel a world apart from manual focusing, say a typical DSLR lens, which has usually got a fly-by-wire internal motor in. There's a direct control between the lens elements and the ring that you turn, and it has a beautiful feel that really helps you control the focus precisely. Now the aperture ring, or the iris ring, that's kind of what filmmakers like to call it, sits at the back here, and also it goes from T2.6 all the way up to T22. So what's the difference between T-stops and F-stops? F-stop is a theoretical number, so actually it can really change, where a T-stop is actually a transmission number, a measure of the light coming through it. So this is a T2.6, which I suppose would make it around about an F2.4 maybe. It's a little bit brighter, but it means it's consistent. A T2.6 figure on this lens will be the same as T2.6 on a different lens. One of the biggest differences between this and even say a normal manual focus photo lens is that the aperture ring is completely smooth and stepless. It doesn't go click, 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 which means that you can change apertures smoothly and precisely during filming if you want to. And of course it also has the standard 0.8 pitch gears for you to put on a rig so you can adjust the aperture remotely if that's what you want to do. Now at the front of the lens, this has a magnetic lens hood attachment, which is actually pretty neat, just clips right on. At the top and bottom of the lens are two threaded holes. These are so you can put lens supports on them. And the front of this lens is 95mm in diameter so that you can fasten on a standard matte box onto the front if you require. It also has a standard filter thread here so you can screw in conventional photography style filters. But one of the big benefits of a manual focus cinema lens is all about focus breathing. On a typical lens that's not designed like this, such as a DSLR lens, as you change focus typically from near to far away, the extremes of the range, then the actual image changes size in the viewfinder. It gets bigger or smaller. This is called focus breathing, and cinema lenses go out of their way to design against that, and this one does it really well. It's really hard to perceive any focus breathing whatsoever. Okay, so what would you use a 15mm lens for? Well, it crams lots of things in. Of course, if you can't get far away from your subject, it gets an awful lot of the scene in. It also changes perspective. If you point it up at buildings, they kind of lean over, gives a really dramatic look to your pictures. It's great for things like shooting in car interiors or in small places. And what's good about a lens like this, which is a corrected 15mm lens, is it doesn't have the bowed edges that's typical of, say, a fisheye lens. On a 35mm full frame camera, like this Sony a7R Mark III, then 15mm is very, very wide. However, on a camera with a super 35mm sensor, or a full frame like this set to crop mode, then the 15 becomes roughly equivalent to a 20, which is still pretty wide, but not so wide as to be a really extreme lens you don't use very often. Actually, this lens really does have a lot of uses, because how often do you find yourself shooting in a tight place and you can't get everything in? Well, a 15 is great. Go wider to the 11 and it does tend to get a bit too extreme. The 15mm lens is a great addition to any filmmaker's kit bag. Now, one of the benefits of using a lens that is so fast, wide open at 2.6, is you get a really nice shallow depth of field. Being such a wide lens, you're not going to get the wafer thin depth of field like you get on, say, a 50mm 1.2, for example. However, wide open, focus on something really close, like these flowers that I focused on, then the background really does have a nice, soft, out of focus look to it. The bokeh, you might want to say. That means it is possible to give a cinematic, shallow depth of field, even with a lens that's so wide. Now, in terms of optical quality, this lens is really a great performer in every area, pretty much apart from one, which is flare. And that's because it's so wide. With the lens hood on, it will cut flare down, but anything with such a wide angle of view of 15mm, you are going to get quite a lot of sunshine in the frame, and that is going to cause some flares. The flare actually is pretty nice, and I quite like it. But you've got to be careful if you really want to avoid any flare in your lenses. But apart from that, it's a really great performer. It's contrasty, it's sharp, it has resolving power up to 8K. You're just not going to want anything sharper than a lens like this. And that's something that can't be said of some more budget options. Now, when you order this lens, it's available in metric markings or in imperial markings. So if you work in feet and inches or in meters, you specify the lens that you want. Now, on some of Irix lenses, there's a second ring up at the front called the adaptive ring, which is a kind of unusual way of helping you manual focus. It's actually got little clicks on it. However, the 15mm lens doesn't have them. It's a traditional manual focus lens that anyone who's ever used a lens like this will instantly feel right at home with. It really balances well, it sits nicely in the hand, it's so easy to control, and it gives you such precision when you're manual focusing. Now, in terms of quality, if you're shooting fully wide open or fully closed down, you are going to get a little bit of degradation of image quality, but really, that doesn't matter too much. We're not pixel peeping, we're trying to make some nice pictures, right? And of course, being a cinema all-manual focus lens, there's nothing fancy like image stabilization or, of course, autofocus in it. It is what it is. It is an all-manual lens for filmmakers, cinematographers even, that really want amazing quality from their gear. Of course, you might say the natural home for a lens like this is on the front of a cinema camera, such as this Sony FS5. This one has the slightly unusual Sony 18-110 f4 PZ lens, or PZ lens if you're American, which is a kind of a hybrid. It's sort of like a cinema lens with manual focusing ring, except they're electronically controlled. And you can see the size difference between the two. So, popping the Sony lens off and putting the Irix lens in its place is easy. And you can really feel it has a really nice tight fit on the mount. And actually, it makes it a really small, very nice package. Of course, this being a super 35mm camera, there is a crop, which means that it's roughly equivalent to 20mm. But actually, that is a really nice, lightweight package that really works well. With the camera outputting RAW to the Atomos monitor on the top, you've got an amazingly small and compact, genuine cinema camera with a lens that definitely is really up to the task of the quality. But really, who should buy a lens like this? If you're a vlogger or beginner, or someone who trusts their autofocus, this definitely isn't the lens for you. But if you're ready to make the move into more serious and considered filmmaking, then a manual focus lens that's really fast like this one could be a great addition to your kit bag. Yes, it's about £1,000, $1,200. That is a lot of money, but compared to the rivals, it isn't. And actually, this lens oozes quality. It's got great image quality, it handles supremely well, it's relatively small and light compared to some cinema lenses out there, and it marks you out as a serious filmmaker. If you really want to make a difference to your films, a lens like this would go a long way to helping you do it. So thanks for watching, and join us next time on The Rec.